Maybe, I think in that same book you were talking about earlier, The Game of Desire. Is that the title?
Yes. Yes, notes.
Yes, notes.
Your iPads look so full too.
Oh, we prepared. You said earlier, it's kind of like a manual where you can better yourself in basically 60 days and learn how to use relationships as a growing experience for who you are. In your experience dating, what relationship or what are some of the biggest revelations you've had about yourself through different relationships with people?
Oh, yeah. So I would say what I learned, I actually did a video about this, the reasons why if I take accountability for all my failed connections in my 20s, I can like narrow it down to three things, which is one, using drama as a tool to connect with other people or to be interesting. So when I was in dramatic relationships, it was, you're the center of attention with your friends. It's an easy way to connect with your mom. Like it becomes a part of who you identify as, is like this interesting person who's got this like soap opera life. And so I had to realize that in many ways I was addicted to the attention that being in drama brought me.
I feel like you just clocked so many people.
Number two, with attachment styles, I always considered myself to be very secure because I come from an avoidant father and an anxious mother. So I was like, oh, I net out to be perfectly equal. Ta-da! But I realized that I actually was a mix of both. So I would be very anxious in the beginning of relationships and overinvest and like really hopeful this would be my person. And I would throw everything into them. And if I got a sense from them that they weren't reciprocating, I would switch to being my dad and become super avoidant and undervalue the relationship and be very cold. And that put people on this really weird like trajectory of never quite knowing how I felt and me never really being honest about my own feelings. And then the third thing that I said that probably was like my biggest downfall. What was my third thing? Oh, caring so much about like, we spend a lot of time, especially when we go through that self-help journey. And I went through that self-help journey to like get to know myself. Like, what's my love language? Like, what matters to me? Like, what are my values? Like, what are my core strengths? And you're like, bitch, there's two of you though. Like, so you got to be interested in somebody else as well too. And I think when we're young, when we're a child, right? Like the way that you're loved by your parents, you're just loved like for you. And through that relationship, the best thing you can do to reciprocate love is to work on yourself and to be the best you can be. But when you become adults and you're two adults loving each other, it now switches where it's not like a parental love anymore, where it's all about you and your needs. And the best thing you can do is like be the best version of yourself. You have to be interested in bringing out the best in somebody else. You have to be interested in helping them develop and helping them grow and being curious about their experiences and their needs. So I feel like I was a very one-sided lover. And that probably was the reason why I didn't receive a lot from other people, because I never was interested in what they needed in return.
Right.
That's fascinating. Sense. I think those are really resonant takeaways that hopefully can speak to a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast right now, because I think a lot of people...
Okay, your turn though. Why do you think some of your... If you thought about your old relationships and why they failed and you had to find yourself as the root cause, what would you say is some of your issues?
Well, I'm afraid of intimacy.
Yeah, you do therapy.
I'm emotionally unavailable. Although I just recently stopped smoking weed and I'm in therapy twice a week to like become available. But, you know, that comes from like having divorced parents and whatnot and just going for people who are emotionally available. And then like plot twist, I'm the one who's emotionally unavailable. So recognizing that pattern in people. I mean, in my own personal dating. And now I'm single as fuck and we're in a pandemic. So can't really work on it.
I think for me, some of my previous relationships failed because I didn't have a strong sense of who I was. And I was expecting them to give me that sense of who I was. And when they ultimately and continuously fell short of that because I can't find my own identity in someone else, I got upset with them and like would run from that.
Can you give an example?
Huh?
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I think I definitely dated a few guys in college, and I'm definitely someone who adopts personalities based on who I was seeing at the time. So I had different interests in, let's say, you know, I was like super interested in snowboarding for a couple of years because that was just like, you know, I had crushes on guys who were doing that. And, you know, I would be interested in the same like movies or music. And like ultimately when I didn't feel fulfilled by those things, it would lead to arguments of like, well, why aren't you giving me the things I need when it's like, that's not actually on them, I guess.
That's fascinating.
Does that make sense?
A lot about snowboarding?
Yeah. Well, I don't do it as
team.
Yeah, I was fully on the ski team for 4 years in college because
Fully.
I competed in everything. Like I joined the ski team.
You're also athletic.
I am athletic, but like that was not something that I had like a sincere interest in, and then I just kept doing it for 4 years because I wouldn't even admit to myself that I had done it for him. I was just like, well, I'm here
to
now.
justify
I guess
it, like, oh wait, maybe I like it.
Yeah,
just see it through.
There's a reason I haven't really snowboarded since college. Let's just say that.
I love that.
But yeah, I mean, I think you've also talked about this and that you can't really be a mirror for yourself. I'm fully pivoting away from this conversation, but you used it as a way to talk about getting feedback in terms of sex and relationships from your exes, and that like if you can't tell it for yourself, the people you can ask how you can improve are your exes. I was wondering if you've ever done that yourself, if you've gone to an ex and said like, what was the issue here?
Oh, yes. I did it in the book, actually. And I reached out to somebody who really like, man, there was a time in my life that I felt like I had Tourette's. I was just so angry.
Oh, no.
I would just be in my car driving and just burst out into like these monologues about how mad I was. Like this person just left me without any explanation. And it was just such a deeply, I don't want to use the word traumatic because that's such an overused word, but
upsetting.
Just a really hard loss for me. I feel like I went through the stages of grief. I read this book that was called like The Shack. Do you remember that book?
No.
It was like a famous book back in the day, but they had this part in it where it was called like the great sadness, like in the great sadness of this person's life. And I like remember being like, this is my great sadness. I had no idea why this person left me. And it was like years and years later. And I was doing the book and I was working with these 6 women. And so they were all dreading the activity. So in solidarity, I was like, I'll do it too. Like, we'll do this all together. But of course, for me, I was like, at the time I was married. And so I was like, I don't need this activity. But it was so deeply healing and telling for me, even though it had been so long. And of course, there was no chance or no desire for reconciliation. It was just genuinely an exploration into myself. And some of the things that he said were actually like light bulb moments for some of the patterns I still had to be working on. Like, I'll just give you like the baseline thing he said to me. One, he said I had BO sometimes, which was like the thing that you'd least want to hear,
right?
But so true. Cause I remember I was going to like a reused clothing stage, or I was going to like a minimal deodorant, and I just, you know,
very natural.
The man. I was going through the fuck the man moment. And I've had to like bounce back from that. Like, okay, cool. Like, we can still fuck the man and you know, do consignment, but like, let's get deodorant that actually works for your body.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice little change. But then they also kind of mentioned the needy narcissistic thing, where I'd be like really needy sometimes and then really cold and clammed up other times. And then through that was interesting because that person left me and deserted me and never gave me the opportunity to like have a conversation. And I just always ran with the narrative that they were emotionally unavailable. But what he explained to me is he was like, I never thought you were capable of having those conversations. I just didn't look at you as somebody who had like a mushy, soft side who I could come to and talk about. So it just felt easier to not even try to engage with you in that way. So I thought that he was the one who was emotionally closed off, but like he never came to me because he didn't perceive me as somebody who was emotionally capable of engaging in that way.
And do you think that you weren't at that time, or were you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think because I was doing that teetering thing, right? So I might be mushy. Like I remember I made him a scrapbook once and I didn't really feel like I got the reaction out of him that I wanted. And so then I like made fun of the scrapbook and like made fun of something else in it. And like, I just like turned it into a joke rather than like leaning into like, this actually was something I really cared about. And I really care about you. And I want you to receive it positively. So I just think that sort of push and pull dynamic of like, I really care about you. You don't care about me. Fuck you. Go die. Was difficult for somebody to feel like, oh, I can be open with her.
Yeah. Well, how old were you when this happened? And how like long were you
25.
dating?
Yeah, I'm in 25.
Okay.
25 mark. Yeah.
Well, Yeah, you're happily married now and with a baby, so it all worked out.
I mean, but I think it didn't work out just because I had to really I started in sex education when I was 19 years old, mostly because I had a really terrible teen sex life. And I thought to myself, either one, I'd become a nun and I just stopped trying to engage in this way, or number two, I learned how to do it correctly. And so I kind of came to the exact same crossroad around 28, 29 years old, where all my relationships just seemed really dramatic and very negative. And at that time, I was in a really toxic relationship that was just winding down. And so, okay, either one or two things. Either all cis heterosexual men are trash and I'm perfect and everyone's terrible and this is just not meant for me and I should just live by myself because I'm great by myself, or I've been doing this wrong. And so I threw myself into research, read a bunch of books about dating and connection and influence, and even like things like marketing, like how to market yourself. And that's when I was like, oh, I've been doing this all wrong. And so I completely like re-strategized and reformatted the way that I approach dating, which gave me better results, which is what the Game of Desire is about. But yeah, it didn't just work out because I was just like, just with time and drinking water and setting intentions. Like I had to get really strategic about it.
No amount of water will help.
No amount of water is going to help. No, it's not.
Well, you and your husband started off as friends with benefits, right?
Yes.
That can go so south. How did you arrive?
How'd you bag him?
Yeah. How did you guys navigate it?
It's kind of exactly piggybacking off what I just said. I'd already done so much research in this area. And then I already had the basis of sex education there. So I always say this to people. Can you have sex on the first date? Absolutely. Can you have a successful friends with benefits? Absolutely. Is it hard to do? Absolutely. So if you're not investing the time and energy to research this part of yourself, understand what your drives are, understand what your triggers are, understand what motivates you in relationships, you have to really have a deep dive and have a lot of self-discipline to successfully engage in these kinds of relationships. Just by virtue of the fact that we're pair bonding mammals. Like we are born to bond. We're born to connect.
Right.